We have a request asking how to paint a wet surface of a stone, which usually is at a riverside. Well, you do that just the way you paint anything else, but let's go into it. As always, in order to paint anything, you need to know how to look at it. So what are you looking for? Now, the rocks that you're looking at, the ones that are dry are going to have a characteristic. The ones that are wet are going to have a characteristic. But your ability to observe that is going to clue you in as to what you do to paint it, or how to paint that image. So let me just give you the way you approach painting any image. Observe the shape, and so I'm going to just do a very, very simple little preliminary sketch here. I'm going to take this rock right here, obviously wet. I'm just going to take just do a very simple, what I call a preliminary sketch. Take one side of the shape, which would go something like this, and then we'll see another side of the shape which turns like that. We see another side of the shape which does something like this. We see this side of the shape which does something like this first, and then it curves down and reaches down, something like that, kind of disappears into the shadow, so I can't quite tell what it does. So then we have the upper side of the shape, which does something like this, something like that, something like this, something like that. We have some variations in there. And then we have the edge of the top of the shape, which does something like this, this, and here like that. Now we've got the basic sides of the shape we're looking at. Oh, I see right there, there's a little broken spot. All right, that's another shape, another corner. So when you're looking at rocks, you're looking at various planes or shapes that will turn away from you or do various things. You just look at the angle of that edge and how long it is. That's all there is to it. So the angle of this edge is this, and that's how long it is, blah, blah, blah. All right, so you may know that. But then what about if it's a wet rock? Okay, what we do first of all is observe, first of all, is it in shadow? Where it is in shadow, is it not in shadow? This one has a light source that throws this side into shadow. So we need to look at the value differences first. So we got a very dark over here. We've got it a little bit lighter here and a little bit lighter there. So that side, because the light is coming from ahead, all of this part is in shadow. Then when the rock is wet, you're going to have reflection. You're going to have reflected light because the wet acts like sort of a little mirror. So when you have that reflection, it's still in shadow. It's going to, what we look for then is what color is that reflection and what value. So I'm going to very quickly kind of I'll show you the elements of how to observe and then what to do about observing. Now, to block in, we start with the deepest shadow area. Now, if you're there in plain air, you're going to see that a little differently, but we're given a photograph here, so we'll have to follow what we're seeing in the photograph. So here's what I see. I see that very, very dark. I saw that as sort of a bluish, blue, low intensity blue dark, or grayish, you'd call it gray. I'm just using an ultramarine blue and transparent oxide red here, which are complements to create that kind of gray blue. And so we see that, and we will simply just block that in as a dark blue or blue-gray as we see it. If you call it rock, like I say in all these quick tips, if you call it rock, it's not going to be helpful. If you look at its color, look at its value, look at its color or its hue, and look at its intensity or saturation. And when you do that and call that to yourself, not defective rock, not the factor of wet rock, but just describe to yourself what you're seeing. What are you looking at here? So maybe a little bit lighter at the bottom there, reflecting a little bit more light at the bottom. And there's that side of the rock, right there. Now, we see this portion of the rock is a little bit lighter. Still that gray, a little bit lighter and a little bit bluer. Now, let me tell you, if you just describe to yourself the color that you're looking at, the value you're looking at, then and you record that, it will automatically communicate wet rock. So you don't have to say wet rock to know that you're painting wet rock. So I'm just going to go by the color and the value. Color value and intensity, or the hue value and intensity. So this is a little bit bluer, and it varies a little bit. So I'll just use that same area. I'll raise the value to about, yeah, that's right there. And then I'll shape it according to the shape I'm looking at. See a little bit of variation in value in there, a little bit darker right here. I'm describing to you what I'm seeing. So if you describe to yourself what you're seeing, you should be able to paint anything you're looking at. So what am I seeing? I'm seeing it gets a little darker right here, it's a little bluer right there, a little darker right there, gets a little lighter as it right here. It's a little bit lighter on the edge here, a little bit lighter as it goes down like this, and that actually connects that shape. I'm describing to you what I see. That shape is actually connecting here at the bottom. And what I see at the bottom, I see a little bit bluer, similar value to this, a little bit bluer. And then I see on the other side of that rock, where it's sitting, or where it's wedged into the ground, I see it as very dark. So I make it darker. And I'll move the brush strokes this way to make that darker. So that sets it down. Now I'm going to continue to move forward. And let's see, what are we seeing there? We're seeing it not only changes value here, but it changes color. It's reflecting something of the environment, but also might be seeing something of the color of that rock. It actually begins to get a little bit more, a little bit warmer, as if it's a little more purple. So I'm going to reach up just a little bit of alizarin crimson there, and that is just a little bit of alizarin crimson mixed with white. And let's see that, and that ends up being a little bit more neutral. So I'll make it a little bit more neutral and a little bit lighter. Let's get some light going on over here, and let's see, is that it? Is that what we're looking at? It needs a little bit more. To see what I'm doing here, I'm describing to you color. I'm describing to you hue, the hue of the color. There we go. That's closer. Is that the same value? Maybe a little bit lighter down there. I'm describing to you the hue, the value, and the intensity that I'm seeing of each area. So that gets a little bit cooler or a little bit bluer as it goes down. There we go. Just blend that in as it goes down like that. And then what happens as it goes up, just describe the colors you're seeing, and as it goes up, it gets a little bit cooler. As that goes up to about right there, it gets a little bit cooler, and it blends. The edges blend right there. And so blending those edges will help to communicate that. As it moves out, it gets a little lighter. So put a little bit of white here. As it moves that way, closer to the water, it gets a little lighter, and it stays warmer. Now let's see, let's get that lighter and warmer. So it's still a little bit on the dark side. There we go. Now lighter, and then it gets cooler. So we see it changing back and forth between blue. Right here it's a little lighter, a little cooler. Up here it's a little darker. This lighter comes that way. As it goes up, it gets a little darker. And right here, and we see those areas kind of broken up. So it gets darker as it goes up here. I'm going to kind of average that out and not try to put in all those details. It's darker on the edge, darker here as it does this and that, and a little bit darker as it does this and that, and then it gets a little bit darker as it goes down here, and then all of that is blended together. So now I'm going to rinse the brush, pull the excess paint out of it. As I said, or maybe started to say, is that normally, or not necessarily normally, but sometimes you can do these blended things. I'll just do this. All right. So those edges get softened so that one blends into the other. You see what I'm doing right there? Kind of like that. Now you begin to see that feels that reflected quality, and then a little bit more blending right here. And so what we do, what do we see on the top? The top is also part of the whole wet scene. But what we see parts of the rock that are cut in like that get darker. And so I'm going to also show parts of the rock back here. We can see that as kind of a light gray. Right in here is kind of a light gray. You see kind of a light gray right here. And let's see, and we just make those marks go in the direction that we see them. And we see a little bit of variation right here. I'm not going to try to get really detailed. I just want to show you just enough. You can already see how just this portion right there, let's get that, make that shape just a little bit more. Yeah. You can already see that begins to feel reflective. Now when we get the lighter, get the top on the rock, you'll begin to feel that. So I'm going to very light, because we see here, and you'll see this when if the light is shining on a wet rock, it actually turns white or silver. So there again, it's a matter of observation. And so what we'll do here, I get a very light gray, which is the same as silver. I get a light gray. That's a little bit warmer as I'm putting it down. Seems to needs to be a little bit warmer, so I'll just add a little bit of a warmer color to it. And so let's see how we can make that go now. So lighter here. Let's see, get a little scumble stroke here. We see this shape kind of rounded into that, and we see this shape kind of round in here. So its shape's rounded. We just pull the brush in a rounded motion, and we see more light here. We see it get a little bit darker there. So that's the whole thing has some variations of light in it, and we see that, and we'll see this, and we see some dark back there. So we observe it gets a little darker. We make it just a little bit darker, like right back in here, for example. It gets a little bit darker, we make it a little bit darker. All right, I'm going to reinforce the light. So we're seeing lighter here, lighter here, lighter here, lighter here, lighter here, here. And let's see, that remains pretty dark there. Now it's where are the soft edges and where are the light edges. Now, I hope that you're following what I'm actually looking for, because if you just imitate me painting a rock, it's not going to do you any good at all. It never really does any good just to imitate someone else painting something. Now, there'll be people who might have an argument with me about that, but I'm saying, okay, you might imitate somebody else painting something, but unless you can paint it without imitation, it's not really taught you anything. So I'll reinforce the dark there. So what I'm trying to do here is to teach you how to look for the variations in dark, the variations in middle value, variations in light. Well, I say it a different way, the way I said it to begin with. The variations of value, how dark is it, how light is it, the variations in hue, hue meaning color. What is the name of the color you're seeing? Red, yellow, I should say another way, orange, yellow, orange, red, violet, blue, and so on. And then what intensity or what saturation are you seeing? How saturated, how much color do you see in there? In other words, how neutral or how gray is it? And so now you can see as I'm moving along, I'm going to soften those edges just a little bit more right here. This is a little bit darker right here, and a little bit darker right there, a little bit darker right here. As it comes down, see a little bit darker right there as it goes this way and then comes down like that. So let's see, do we have that feeling? And the edges need to be softened. Soften the edges here, soften the edges there, and soften the edges there. Now, do we have that feeling now of a wet rock? If we had the water around it, that would help, but I'm not going to take the time to do that. I am going to trim the edges just a little bit. Right here, just take a, there we go, just like that. And kind of trim those edges just a little bit, just to make that a little bit clearer. Trim the edges right in here, like that. All right, now am I looking at where do I need to adjust? I'm going to put just a little bit more light right here, just a little bit more of that reflected light right here and here. And I'm hoping that that will give you an idea of what to look for and the sequence with which you would follow painting anything that you're looking at by not observing what it is, but by observing its shape, its value, the variations of value, the hue, the variations of hue, and the variations of intensity. And if you found this helpful, and if you'd like for me to explore something that you might be having trouble with, drop a comment right down here, and we'll put that on the schedule. And check out our full-length videos where you get the real instruction. And there's your quick tip.